Hello everyone. Welcome back to the English Academy. I hope you're having an amazing day. Before we begin, I want you to do something that almost nobody does anymore. Forget about everyone else. Just for the next few minutes. Forget your friends. Forget your family. Forget your boss. Forget social media. Forget the people who constantly expect something from you. Because today, this conversation is about you. Let me ask you a simple question. How many times have you said yes when your heart was desperately asking you to say no? Think about it. Maybe someone asked for another favor, even though you were already exhausted. Maybe someone called you at the worst possible moment, and instead of protecting your own time, you immediately said, "Sure, no problem." Maybe you agreed to work overtime, even when your body needed rest. Maybe you canceled your own plans, just because you didn't want someone else to feel disappointed. And after all of that, you smiled. You acted like everything was fine. But deep inside, you felt frustrated. You felt tired. You felt ignored. You felt invisible. If that sounds familiar, then today's video could completely change the way you look at your life. Because today, we're going to talk about one of the smallest words in the English language. A word made of only 2 letters, but powerful enough to protect your peace, your confidence, your relationships, your future, and your self-respect. That word is no. Most people think saying no is rude. Some believe it makes them selfish. Others are afraid that people will stop liking them. But the truth is exactly the opposite. Learning to say no isn't about becoming a bad person. It's about finally becoming honest with yourself. Because every single unnecessary yes comes with a hidden price. Sometimes that price is your time. Sometimes it's your energy. Sometimes it's your happiness. And sometimes it's years of your life. Here's something I want you to remember throughout this entire video. Every time you say yes to something that doesn't matter, you're automatically saying no to something that does. Read that again in your mind. Every unnecessary yes is a hidden no to your own dreams, to your own goals, to your own future. Now let me ask you another question. Who is the most important person in your life? Some of you might say, my parents. Others might say, my best friend. My husband. My wife. My children. And those answers are beautiful. But here's the truth. If you constantly destroy your own peace, trying to protect everyone else's, eventually, you won't have anything left to give. Imagine holding a glass full of water. Every person around you comes with an empty cup. One friend asks for a little. You pour. A family member needs help. You pour again. A colleague wants your time. You pour again. Another friend asks for another favor. You pour again. You keep pouring. Again. And again. And again. Then one day, you look inside your own glass. It's empty. Now tell me, how will you drink? How will you survive? How will you continue helping anyone when you've already given everything away? This is exactly what happens to people who never learn to say no. They don't lose themselves overnight. It happens slowly. One favor at a time. One sacrifice at a time. One unnecessary yes at a time. At first, helping everyone feels good. It makes you feel important. It makes you feel needed. It makes you believe people appreciate you. But something quietly changes. People stop appreciating your kindness. They start expecting it. And expectations are much heavier than gratitude. The first time someone asks for your help, they say, "Can you help me?" A few months later, the same person says, "I need you to do this." Notice the difference? It no longer sounds like a request. It sounds like an expectation. That's what happens when people become used to unlimited access to your time. The sad reality is, most people don't respect what is always available. Think about your own life. Have you ever ignored a message simply because you knew that person would always reply later? Have you ever postponed meeting someone because you knew they'd always understand? Most of us have. Not because we're bad people, but because the human mind naturally places less value on things that are always available. The same rule applies to your time. The same rule applies to your attention. And the same rule applies to you. If you're available for everyone, all the time, without limits, without boundaries, people slowly stop seeing your kindness as a gift. They begin seeing it as your responsibility. And that's where emotional exhaustion begins. You wake up every morning feeling busy. But somehow, you never feel fulfilled. You're constantly solving everyone else's problems, while your own dreams quietly wait in the background. Days become weeks. Weeks become months. Months become years. And one day, you suddenly ask yourself a painful question. When did I stop living for myself? The answer isn't difficult. It happened every single time you ignored your own needs, just to avoid disappointing someone else. And if you think this habit started only after you became an adult, you're about to discover something surprising. When you were a child, nobody taught you how to protect your boundaries. Instead, you were rewarded for being the good kid, the quiet kid, the obedient kid, the child who never argued, the child who never refused. Think about school for a moment. How many times were you praised simply because you always listened? How many times were you told, "Be nice. Share everything. Don't say no. Don't disappoint people"? Those lessons weren't wrong. Kindness is beautiful. Respect is important. Helping others is a wonderful quality. But somewhere along the way, many of us misunderstood the lesson. We didn't just learn kindness. We learned something much more dangerous. We learned that keeping everyone happy was more important than being honest with ourselves. And that belief quietly followed us into adulthood. Now instead of teachers, it's friends. Instead of classmates, it's coworkers. Instead of parents, it's society. The faces change, but the pressure stays exactly the same. Everyone wants something. Your time. Your attention. Your energy. Your money. Your skills. Your emotional support. Piece by piece. The world keeps asking. And because you've spent years believing that saying yes makes you a good person, you keep giving. Even when you're exhausted. Even when you're overwhelmed. Even when your own life is falling apart. Here's something most people never realize. People pleasers don't usually say yes because they truly want to. They say yes because they're afraid. Afraid of rejection. Afraid of conflict. Afraid of disappointing someone. Afraid of being misunderstood. Afraid that people will stop loving them. But let me ask you something. If someone only stays in your life because you never say no, is that really love? Or is it convenience? Real relationships don't require you to abandon yourself. Real friends don't expect unlimited sacrifices. Real family members don't measure your love by how many times you ignore your own needs. Healthy relationships have boundaries. Unhealthy relationships have expectations. There is a huge difference. Imagine you own a beautiful house. Would you leave the front door open 24 hours a day? And allow anyone to walk inside whenever they wanted? Of course not. Not because you're selfish. But because you understand something important. Everything valuable needs protection. Your phone has a password. Your bank account has security. Your home has locks. But what about your mind? What about your peace? What about your time? Why do we protect our money, but give unlimited access to our energy? Your time is far more valuable than money. You can always earn more money. But you can never earn another yesterday. Every hour you waste is gone forever. That's why successful people guard their time so carefully. Not because they think they're better than everyone else, but because they understand the value of focus. Every yes comes with a cost. If someone invites you somewhere, and you say yes, you're also saying no to everything else you could have done during that time. Maybe you could have exercised. Maybe you could have learned a new skill. Maybe you could have spent time with your family. Maybe you simply needed rest. Every decision closes another door. That's why saying yes should never be automatic. It should be intentional. Here's a simple truth that changed my perspective forever. If it's not a clear yes, it's probably a no. Think about how often you've agreed to something while secretly hoping the other person would cancel. How many times have you accepted an invitation, only to regret it a few hours later? How many times have you promised to help someone, then spent the entire day wishing you had just been honest? That feeling is your mind telling you something. It isn't laziness. It isn't selfishness. It's a boundary trying to protect you. The problem is, most people ignore that inner voice. They silence it. Again. And again. Until one day, they can't even hear it anymore. Instead, they live on autopilot. Saying yes. Smiling. Helping. Sacrificing. Repeating the same cycle. Without ever asking one important question. What do I actually want? And when a person loses the ability to answer that question, they slowly lose their identity, because the life you're living should be built around your values, not everyone else's expectations. The difficult part is, breaking this habit isn't as simple as saying the word no. There's a psychological reason your heart races. Your hands feel uncomfortable. And guilt suddenly appears the moment you try to refuse someone. Once you understand that hidden reason, everything begins to make sense. The reason guilt feels so powerful is because your brain has been trained to believe that saying no means hurting someone. But that's not true. There is a huge difference between hurting someone and disappointing someone. Sometimes, people need to hear no. Not because you don't care about them, but because you care about yourself too. Unfortunately, many people grow up believing that self-respect is selfish. So every time they choose themselves, their mind immediately whispers, "You're being rude. You're being selfish." They'll think you're a bad person. They'll stop liking you. But let me ask you something. If someone gets angry simply because you protected your own peace, were they respecting you in the first place? Or were they simply enjoying unlimited access to your kindness? That question changes everything. Because people who truly care about you will respect your boundaries. They may feel disappointed for a moment, but they'll understand. The people who become furious, manipulate you, or try to make you feel guilty, are often the same people who benefited the most from the old version of you. The version who never said no. The version who apologized for everything. The version who sacrificed their happiness just to make everyone else comfortable. And here's the painful truth. Not everyone will celebrate your growth. Some people only loved the version of you they could control. The moment you start setting boundaries, you'll hear things like, "You've changed. You're not the same person anymore. You've become selfish. You used to care." Don't let those words fool you. Sometimes, changing is exactly what you need. Because the old version of you was constantly exhausted, constantly stressed, constantly overwhelmed. If protecting your peace changes the way people see you, maybe they never saw the real you to begin with. Imagine carrying a backpack. Every time someone asks for a favor, you place another stone inside. It's only one stone. It doesn't feel heavy. Then another. Then another. Then another. 4 weeks. 4 months. 4 years. One day. You can barely stand. Not because one stone was too heavy, but because thousands of tiny stones eventually became impossible to carry. That's exactly how emotional burnout works. Nobody wakes up one morning completely exhausted. Burnout is built. One unnecessary yes at a time. One ignored feeling at a time. One broken boundary at a time. People often say, "I don't know why I'm so tired." Maybe you're not tired because you're doing too much. Maybe you're tired because you're doing too much. For everyone except yourself. There's a difference. Working hard for your dreams gives you purpose. Working endlessly to satisfy everyone else steals your energy. That's why 2 people can work the same number of hours. Yet one feels fulfilled, while the other feels empty. Purpose creates energy. People-pleasing destroys it. Here's another truth most people never hear. Every time you say yes just to avoid an uncomfortable conversation, you're choosing temporary comfort over long-term peace. You avoid 10 seconds of discomfort and create 10 days of stress. Think about that. How many times have you agreed to something simply because saying no felt awkward? The conversation would have lasted only a few seconds, but the consequences lasted for days. Sometimes weeks. Sometimes even years. The short discomfort of saying no is always smaller than the long regret of saying yes. The problem is, our brain naturally wants to avoid uncomfortable moments. It chooses immediate relief instead of lasting peace. That's why learning to say no feels difficult in the beginning. You're training your mind to choose long-term happiness instead of short-term comfort. And every powerful habit begins exactly the same way. Awkward. Uncomfortable. Unfamiliar. But the more you practice, the more natural it becomes. The first no feels impossible. The second feels difficult. The third feels uncomfortable. The 10th feels normal. One day, you'll realize something incredible. The people who genuinely respect you never stopped respecting you at all. Only the people who wanted unlimited access to your life had a problem with your boundaries. And that realization gives you a kind of freedom that most people spend their entire lives searching for. Because for the first time, you're no longer living to be accepted. You're finally living according to your own values. And once that shift happens, you begin noticing something fascinating about the way human psychology really works. Have you ever noticed that the people who are the busiest often have the strongest boundaries? Think about the most successful people you know. Doctors, entrepreneurs, athletes, authors, business leaders. Do you think they say yes to every phone call, every invitation, every request? Of course not. Not because they don't care about people, but because they understand a simple truth. Every distraction steals a piece of your future. Imagine trying to build a house. Every single day, you carefully place one brick. Slowly, the walls begin to rise. Your dream is finally taking shape. Then someone walks by and says, "Can you help me for a minute?" You stop building. Another person comes. "I need a small favor." You stop again. Another message arrives. Another phone call. Another request. Another interruption. By the end of the day, you've been busy for 12 hours. But your house hasn't grown at all. This is exactly how many people spend their lives. Always busy. Rarely progressing. Because being busy and being productive are two completely different things. You can spend an entire day answering messages, attending unnecessary meetings, doing favors, listening to other people's problems, running from one task to another, and still go to bed feeling like you accomplished nothing. Why? Because movement isn't always progress. Sometimes, you're simply running in circles. The most valuable skill you can develop is deciding what deserves your attention. Because attention is your life's greatest currency. Where your attention goes, your future follows. If your attention is always controlled by everyone else, don't be surprised when your dreams never become reality. Here's something worth remembering. Successful people don't have fewer distractions. They simply protect their attention better than everyone else. They understand that every yes has a hidden cost. That's why they don't answer immediately. They don't commit immediately. They don't promise immediately. Instead, they pause. They think. They ask themselves one simple question. Does this move me closer to the life I want? If the answer is no, their answer is also no. It's not personal. It's intentional. Now think about your own life. How many times have you interrupted your own goals to solve problems that weren't even yours? Maybe you were studying, but stopped because someone called. Maybe you were exercising, but skipped your workout to help someone who could have easily solved the problem themselves. Maybe you were working on your dream, but gave up another evening because someone expected your time. One evening doesn't seem like much. Neither does one workout. Neither does one study session. But success and failure are built exactly like that. One decision at a time. Nobody becomes successful overnight. And nobody loses their dreams overnight either. Tiny choices, repeated consistently, create extraordinary results. Or extraordinary regret. The difficult part is, most distractions don't look dangerous. They look harmless. Just 5 minutes. It'll only take a second. Can you quickly help me? Those words sound small, but repeated hundreds of times, they slowly steal months of your life. Imagine someone taking just $1 from your wallet every day. You probably wouldn't notice immediately. But after several years, the loss would be enormous. Time works exactly the same way. Most people don't lose their future in one dramatic moment. They lose it 5 minutes at a time. One unnecessary yes after another. That's why protecting your time isn't selfish. It's responsible. Because every hour you save today can become the opportunity that changes your life tomorrow. And the people who truly care about your future will never ask you to destroy it just to make them comfortable. The challenge begins when someone close to you asks for something. That's where emotions become stronger than logic. And that's exactly where most people make the mistake that keeps them trapped for years. The hardest person to say no to isn't a stranger. It isn't your boss. It isn't even your friends. Most of the time, it's the people you love. Because emotions make boundaries feel uncomfortable. You don't want your parents to feel ignored. You don't want your best friend to think you've changed. You don't want your partner to believe you don't care anymore. So you stay silent. You agree. You sacrifice. Again. And again. But here's something important. Loving someone doesn't mean saying yes to everything they ask. Real love respects limits. Imagine your closest friend calls you every single night. At first, you happily answer. You enjoy the conversations. You laugh together. Everything feels normal. But after a few weeks, those calls become longer. Then they become daily. Soon, they're calling while you're working. While you're studying. While you're spending time with your family. While you're trying to rest. Now ask yourself. Whose responsibility is it to protect your time? Your friends? Or yours? Many people secretly expect others to respect boundaries. That they never communicate. That's impossible. People can't respect limits. They don't know exist. This is why clear communication is so powerful. Instead of saying, I guess it's okay. Say, I'm sorry, I can't today. Instead of making fake excuses. Be honest. I need some time for myself. I already have other priorities. I won't be available this evening. Notice something. None of those sentences are rude. None of them attack anyone. They simply communicate a boundary. And healthy people respect honest boundaries. The ones who don't usually benefited from the absence of those boundaries. Here's another mistake people make. They over-explain everything. Someone asks for a favor. Instead of giving a simple answer, they spend 5 minutes trying to justify it. I'm really sorry. I wish I could. The truth is, I hope you're not upset. Why? Because they're asking for permission. To control their own life. You don't need permission. To protect your peace. You don't need a 10-minute speech. To explain a 2-letter word. No. Simple. Respectful. Clear. Confidence doesn't speak loudly. Confidence speaks clearly. Remember this. The more you explain, the more people believe your boundary is negotiable. A simple answer leaves no confusion. Now, does that mean you should become cold? Never help anyone? Never support your family? Never be there for your friends? Absolutely not. This isn't about becoming selfish. It's about becoming intentional. There will always be moments when helping someone is the right thing to do. But it should come from kindness. Not guilt. There's a huge difference. Kindness says, I want to help. Guilt says, I have to help. Kindness feels peaceful. Guilt feels heavy. Kindness leaves you fulfilled. Guilt leaves you exhausted. Learn to recognize the difference. Because one builds healthy relationships. The other slowly destroys them. Think about the people you admire most. The people who inspire you. Do they spend every hour trying to make everyone happy? Or do they have clear priorities? The truth is, every meaningful life requires difficult choices. Sometimes you'll disappoint people. Sometimes they'll misunderstand you. Sometimes they'll call you selfish. But remember, temporary disappointment is not permanent rejection. People who genuinely value you will adjust. The ones who disappear were often connected to your availability, not your personality. And once you accept that, you stop chasing approval. You start chasing purpose. Because approval changes every day. Purpose lasts a lifetime. The next lesson is something almost nobody talks about. It's the invisible habit that quietly steals confidence. Even from people who seem strong on the outside. Confidence is not built the day you finally say no. It begins much earlier than that. It begins the moment you stop asking yourself one dangerous question. What will people think about me? That single question has stolen more dreams than failure ever has. Think about how many decisions you've made. Not because they were right for you, but because you were worried about other people's opinions. The clothes you wear. The career you choose. The things you post online. The words you speak. Even the dreams you hide. So many people aren't living their own lives. They're living inside someone else's expectations. And that's exhausting. Here's something fascinating about human psychology. Most people are far too busy thinking about themselves to spend as much time judging you as you imagine. Read that again. The fear in your mind is usually much bigger than reality. You imagine people criticizing you, talking about you, rejecting you. But the truth is, everyone is fighting their own battles. Everyone is worried about their own future. Everyone is thinking about their own problems. Yet we spend years living in fear of opinions that rarely even exist. Imagine standing in front of a mirror. Now imagine every single day you allow strangers to write words across that mirror. One person writes, "You're too quiet." Another writes, "You're too ambitious." Someone else writes, "You're selfish." Another says, "You're not good enough." Year after year, the mirror becomes completely covered. Eventually, you can't even see your own reflection anymore. That's exactly what happens when you let other people's opinions define your identity. You slowly lose sight of who you really are. This is why boundaries are about much more than saying no. They're about protecting your identity, your values, your purpose. Because if you don't decide who you are, the world will happily decide for you. One opinion at a time. One expectation at a time. One unnecessary sacrifice at a time. And here's the irony. The people who judge you today will judge you tomorrow. No matter what you do. If you're too kind, someone will call you weak. If you're confident, someone will call you arrogant. If you're quiet, someone will say you're boring. If you're outspoken, someone will say you talk too much. You cannot win the approval game. Because the rules keep changing. The only opinion you can truly control is your own. That's why self-respect is so powerful. When you genuinely respect yourself, you stop needing constant validation. You no longer need everyone to agree with you. You no longer panic every time someone is disappointed. Because you understand something most people never learn. Disappointing someone doesn't automatically mean you've done something wrong. Sometimes, it simply means you've chosen yourself. And that's okay. In fact, it's necessary. Because every strong boundary sends an important message. It tells the world, my time has value. My peace has value. My life has value. And people respond to the standards you consistently maintain. If you constantly abandon your own priorities, people learn that your priorities don't matter. If you constantly interrupt your own work, people assume your work can wait. If you constantly sacrifice your happiness, people eventually stop noticing the sacrifice altogether. That's why boundaries aren't walls. They're filters. They don't keep good people out. They simply keep unhealthy expectations from taking over your life. The moment you truly understand this, you'll stop feeling guilty for protecting your future. Instead, you'll realize that every respectful no is actually a powerful yes. A yes to your goals. A yes to your peace. A yes to your family. A yes to your dreams. And perhaps, the biggest yes you'll ever give is the one you finally give to yourself. But knowing all of this still isn't enough. Because there's one final obstacle that keeps millions of people trapped. And it's far more dangerous than fear itself. The biggest obstacle isn't fear. It isn't rejection. It isn't even other people. The biggest obstacle is the story you've been telling yourself for years. Maybe without even realizing it. You've repeated the same thoughts again and again. If I say no, they won't like me. If I refuse, I'll disappoint them. If I choose myself, people will think I'm selfish. At first, those thoughts seem harmless. But every thought you repeat eventually becomes a belief. And every belief creates your reality. Think about an elephant. When it's very young, a small rope is tied around its leg. The elephant tries to escape. Again. And again. And again. But it's too weak. Eventually, it gives up. Years pass. The elephant becomes one of the strongest animals on earth. Strong enough to break that tiny rope in a single second. But it never tries. Why? Because it still believes. The rope is stronger than it is. Many people live exactly the same way. The rope isn't around their leg. It's around their mind. They've convinced themselves. I'm not allowed to say no. I'm responsible for everyone's happiness. I must always be available. But none of those statements are facts. They're simply beliefs. And beliefs can be changed. The moment you question them, their power begins to disappear. Ask yourself honestly. Who taught you that your worth depends on how much you sacrifice? Who decided that protecting your own peace is selfish? Who made the rule that everyone else's needs must always come before yours? You'll probably discover something surprising. Nobody. It was simply an idea. Repeated so many times that it started feeling like the truth. But truth doesn't fear questions. So question every belief that keeps you trapped. Question every habit that steals your energy. Question every relationship that only survives when you ignore yourself. Because growth always begins with one simple decision. Refusing to believe the old story anymore. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning without feeling guilty for protecting your schedule. Imagine politely saying, "I'm sorry, I won't be able to make it." And instead of feeling anxious, you feel peaceful. Imagine finishing your work, going to the gym, reading that book you've been postponing, spending time with your family, simply because you finally stopped giving every free minute away. That's what boundaries create. Freedom. Not distance. Not loneliness. Freedom. Freedom to choose. Freedom to focus. Freedom to build the life you've always imagined. And here's something beautiful. The more you respect your own time, the more others begin respecting it too. People follow your standards. If you treat your time as precious, others slowly learn to do the same. If you constantly treat your time as unlimited, others will too. Never forget this. Your calendar tells the truth. Not your words. You can say your dreams matter. But if your schedule is completely controlled by other people's priorities, your actions tell a different story. Every day, your calendar answers one important question. What matters most to you? Look at how you spend your hours. The answer is already there. If your dreams never appear on your schedule, they'll probably never appear in your life. Because success isn't built from good intentions. It's built from protected time, protected focus, protected energy, and protected boundaries. The beautiful part is, you don't need to transform overnight. You don't need to become a different person tomorrow. You only need one small change. The next time someone asks for something, don't answer immediately. Pause. Take a breath. Ask yourself one question. Am I saying yes because I truly want to? Or because I'm afraid to say no? That single question can completely change your future. Because awareness always comes before transformation. And once you become aware, you'll begin noticing something incredible. Every confident person you admire follows a few simple habits that anyone can learn. The biggest obstacle isn't fear. It isn't rejection. It isn't even other people. The biggest obstacle is the story you've been telling yourself for years. Maybe without even realizing it. You've repeated the same thoughts again and again. If I say no, they won't like me. If I refuse, I'll disappoint them. If I choose myself, people will think I'm selfish. At first, those thoughts seem harmless. But every thought you repeat eventually becomes a belief. And every belief creates your reality. Think about an elephant. When it's very young, a small rope is tied around its leg. The elephant tries to escape. Again. And again. And again. But it's too weak. Eventually, it gives up. Years pass. The elephant becomes one of the strongest animals on earth. Strong enough to break that tiny rope in a single second. But it never tries. Why? Because it still believes. The rope is stronger than it is. Many people live exactly the same way. The rope isn't around their leg. It's around their mind. They've convinced themselves. I'm not allowed to say no. I'm responsible for everyone's happiness. I must always be available. But none of those statements are facts. They're simply beliefs. And beliefs can be changed. The moment you question them, their power begins to disappear. Ask yourself honestly. Who taught you that your worth depends on how much you sacrifice? Who decided that protecting your own peace is selfish? Who made the rule that everyone else's needs must always come before yours? You'll probably discover something surprising. Nobody. It was simply an idea, repeated so many times, that it started feeling like the truth. But truth doesn't fear questions. So question every belief that keeps you trapped. Question every habit that steals your energy. Question every relationship that only survives when you ignore yourself. Because growth always begins with one simple decision. Refusing to believe the old story anymore. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning without feeling guilty for protecting your schedule. Imagine politely saying, "I'm sorry, I won't be able to make it." And instead of feeling anxious, you feel peaceful. Imagine finishing your work, going to the gym, reading that book you've been postponing, spending time with your family, simply because you finally stopped giving every free minute away. That's what boundaries create. Freedom. Not distance. Not loneliness. Freedom. Freedom to choose. Freedom to focus. Freedom to build the life you've always imagined. And here's something beautiful. The more you respect your own time, the more others begin respecting it too. People follow your standards. If you treat your time as precious, others slowly learn to do the same. If you constantly treat your time as unlimited, others will too. Never forget this. Your calendar tells the truth, not your words. You can say your dreams matter, but if your schedule is completely controlled by other people's priorities, your actions tell a different story. Every day, your calendar answers one important question. What matters most to you? Look at how you spend your hours. The answer is already there. If your dreams never appear on your schedule, they'll probably never appear in your life. Because success isn't built from good intentions. It's built from protected time, protected focus, protected energy, and protected boundaries. The beautiful part is, you don't need to transform overnight. You don't need to become a different person tomorrow. You only need one small change. The next time someone asks for something, don't answer immediately. Pause. Take a breath. Ask yourself one question. Am I saying yes because I truly want to? Or because I'm afraid to say no? That single question can completely change your future. Because awareness always comes before transformation. And once you become aware, you'll begin noticing something incredible. Every confident person you admire follows a few simple habits that anyone can learn. Now imagine yourself 5 years from today. There are two different versions of you. The first version still says yes to everything. Still worries about disappointing people. Still cancels personal goals. Still apologizes for having boundaries. Still feels exhausted. Still wonders why life never changes. Now look at the second version. This person still has the same 24 hours. The same challenges. The same responsibilities. But there's one important difference. This person learned when to say no. Not with anger. Not with arrogance. But with confidence. Because confidence doesn't need permission. It simply knows its priorities. Which version do you want to become? Remember, the future isn't something that suddenly arrives. It's something you create. Decision by decision. Habit by habit. Day by day. Your life tomorrow depends on the boundaries you build today. Here's another truth that changed my life. People don't respect you because you sacrifice everything for them. They respect you because you respect yourself. Read that slowly. Self-respect always comes before respect from others. If you constantly ignore your own needs, why would anyone else believe those needs are important? The standards you set for yourself become the standards other people follow. That's why boundaries are silent teachers. You never have to announce them. You simply live by them. Imagine walking into a library. Everyone speaks quietly. Nobody needs a sign every 5 steps saying, "Please be silent." The environment teaches people how to behave. Your life works exactly the same way. When your actions consistently communicate, "I value my time. I value my peace. I value my goals." People slowly begin treating those things with the same respect. Not everyone, but the right people will. And honestly, those are the only people who truly matter. Here's something difficult to accept. You cannot build an extraordinary life while trying to be available for everyone. It's impossible. Every great achievement in history required focus. Focus requires boundaries. Boundaries require courage. And courage requires accepting one uncomfortable truth. Not everyone will understand your choices. Some people will misunderstand your silence. Some will question your priorities. Some will accuse you of changing. Smile. Thank them for their opinion. And continue walking toward your future. Because every person who has ever achieved something meaningful eventually disappointed someone. Not because they were cruel, but because they refused to abandon their purpose. You have permission to do the same. You have permission to rest. You have permission to protect your peace. You have permission to say, "Not today. I can't. I already have plans. I need time for myself." Those sentences don't make you selfish. They make you emotionally healthy. Never confuse kindness with self-neglect. Never confuse generosity with people-pleasing. And never confuse guilt with love. Real love never asks you to destroy yourself, just to prove you care. As you continue growing, you'll notice something interesting. The more comfortable you become with saying no, the less often you'll actually need to say it. Why? Because people learn. They begin understanding your standards. They stop expecting unlimited access to your life. And that's one of the greatest gifts boundaries can give you. Not distance, but clarity. People finally know where you stand. And so do you. The truth is, your future doesn't need a perfect version of you. It simply needs an honest one. Someone who has the courage to choose purpose over pressure, peace over approval, self-respect over temporary comfort. Because at the end of your life, people won't remember every favor you said yes to. But you'll remember the dreams you either built or abandoned. And that choice has always been yours. Before this video ends, I want to tell you one final story. Imagine an old man sitting quietly on a wooden bench. His hair has turned gray. His face carries the marks of time. Someone walks up to him and asks, "If you could go back and change one thing, what would it be?" The old man smiles. He stays silent for a few seconds. Then he says, "I wish I had spent less time trying to become the person everyone wanted, and more time becoming the person I was meant to be." Think about those words. How many dreams have been buried simply because someone was afraid of disappointing people? How many businesses were never started because someone waited for everyone's approval? How many books were never written? How many songs were never sung? How many opportunities were lost simply because one person couldn't say no? Life is shorter than we think. One day, you'll wake up and realize the years have passed faster than you ever imagined. The people whose opinions once controlled your life will be busy living their own. The arguments you feared won't even matter anymore. The approval you chased will be forgotten. But one thing will remain: the life you built, or the life you postponed. Don't wait until it's too late to protect your dreams. Don't wait until exhaustion forces you to rest. Don't wait until burnout teaches you a lesson that healthy boundaries could have taught you much earlier. Starting today, respect your time. Respect your energy. Respect your future. And most importantly, respect yourself. Because the moment you begin respecting yourself, the world slowly learns to do the same. You don't have to become rude. You don't have to become cold. You don't have to stop being kind. Keep your kindness. Keep your compassion. Keep your generous heart. Just stop giving those beautiful qualities to people who never value them. Save your energy for the people who truly care. Save your time for the goals that truly matter. Save your attention for the life you're trying to create. Remember, every time you say no to distraction, you're saying yes to growth. Every time you say no to guilt, you're saying yes to freedom. Every time you say no to unhealthy expectations, you're saying yes to self-respect. And one day, you'll look back at this decision. Not with regret, but with gratitude. Because the word that once scared you the most will become the word that protected everything you worked so hard to build. If this video helped you see yourself differently, don't let this message end here. Take one lesson from today and apply it before the day is over. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Today. Maybe it's saying no to one unnecessary request. Maybe it's spending one uninterrupted hour on your dream. Maybe it's choosing rest instead of guilt. Whatever it is, make that decision. Your future self is depending on it. Thank you so much for spending your valuable time with me. If you enjoyed this video and found it meaningful, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the English Academy, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another lesson designed to help you become stronger, wiser, and more confident. Until next time, take care of yourself. Protect your peace. Protect your purpose. And never forget, the most powerful yes you'll ever say begins with having the courage to say no. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.